Welcome back to the Midday Show. My guest today is a New York radio legend who can be heard weekday mornings from 5 to 9 Central Time and 6 to 10 Eastern Time on the Cubby and Carolina in the Morning Show on 1035 KTU in New York City. And it can be heard all around the country on iHeartRadio.com. Please welcome Cubby.
Hello there, Brandon. Awesome to be a part of your show. And you said everything correct, but one thing.
What? What did I get wrong?
You said the word legend. I am far, far from a legend, but you know what? I appreciate the kind words.
And someone who is coming up on 20 years in New York radio, because I believe you started in '96 at Z100.
Correct. Yeah, I've been doing radio for over 25 years, but you're right, 20 years in New York, and started working at Z100, the biggest top 40 station in the country, and then made my way across the hall, basically, to 1035 KTU, because I'd always wanted to do a morning show, and Z100 and KTU are in the same family. So KTU gave me the opportunity to be a morning show host, and that's where I've been now for 10 years. So half of it at Z100, half of it at WKTU.
So 20 years in my eyes, that's a legend, definitely.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, look, I've definitely been doing this for a long time, and I mean, in fact, I've been doing it so long. That's how I got my nickname. A lot of people think, Cubby, are you a Chicago Cubs fan, or what's the deal? But my actual real name is Paul Bryant, and Paul Bryant used to be the name of a legendary football coach. He coached college football for Alabama. This is way back in the 70s and early 80s. He's since passed away. But his nickname was Paul Bear Bryant. So when I first started in radio at the age of 16, all my friends said, "Hey, wait a minute, you're Paul, like the bear." And then they started saying, "Wait, you're a kid. You're in radio at 16. You're just a baby. You're a Cubby." So that's how I got my nickname, Cubby. So, I mean, yeah, I guess maybe I have been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, but especially being in New York radio, because I think New York radio is really probably a very competitive place. Definitely now, just being radio, being so accessible now, as opposed to just being, you have to be in the car with the right signal in the right place at the right time. Now you can listen to it on formats like iHeartRadio or TuneIn, and it must be really, really competitive to keep a longevity as long as you have, especially in a place like New York.
Yeah, I mean, it is very competitive, and the fact that I've been able to do it so long does make me feel really well. I think you do have to be, you have to be doing something right to last this long. But like Frank Sinatra said, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, referring to New York City. So I feel like, wow, okay, maybe I can, maybe I'm doing all right now. I mean, I mean, I'm a humble guy. I realize, look, nothing's forever, so I'm just enjoying it while I can. But yeah, the competitive landscape of New York. I mean, to be on the radio at the same time with names like Scott Shannon, and Broadway Bill Lee. I mean, I can go on and on. There's so many big names in this town that it really is an honor to be on the airwaves of New York City.
And what would you say is the best thing about being able to do radio in New York, which is, as Alan Calder, the great announcer for David Letterman, would always say, the greatest city in the world?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, it really is. I mean, the city has everything. I mean, but you know what? Every city is unique in their own way. I mean, some people are happy living in a small, like Boise, Idaho. Some people are happy living in New York City. But I guess New York City just has. It's a melting pot of so many different factors, and being in the biggest city in the world, you get all the major acts, and if when it comes to interviewing people, we're fortunate enough to get all the big names, so that helps a lot, and and we're fortunate enough to be able to grab a big audience, and if you think about it, there's like 14 million people in the area. I mean, 8 million alone just on the island of Manhattan. I mean, that's just on the island of Manhattan. And then you add the surrounding suburbs. I mean, there are a lot of people out there. So, you have to be on your game at all times.
And you mentioned interviews, and that's one of the struggles I've definitely been having with being in a small, not necessarily small, but I'm in Overland Park, Kansas, right outside of Kansas City. That's where the college is located, and being able to try and book guests must be you must in a way feel like it's kind of for granted because you're able to get all the big names in a place like New York when in a place like here where I'm just kind of wheeling and dealing trying to get names. Do you feel like you take it for granted at all?
I don't. We don't take it for granted. No. In fact, we try to interview everybody we can. But I mean, regarding your point, I mean, we have so many people that want to be on the airwaves in New York City that you do have to turn some people away because they know, if they're going to be on the radio in New York, they're going to be hitting big audience, and it's nothing but advertising to them. So, obviously we're not going to turn away Selena Gomez from coming on the radio, but there may be like that a comedian no one's ever heard of that could be very funny, but really, they just want to be on the radio to sell their own CD or whatever, or promote their website. We still have to, unfortunately, use the word no sometimes and say no to people, but it's rare. I mean, look, it's a good problem to have. I mean, but you know what? Even though you're in a small market, at this day and age with technology, going back to what you were talking about with iHeartRadio and all the different podcasts you can do and college radio, you can listen to almost anything or any radio station online now. So I think that it's kind of like you should take somebody like you seriously because you can still get a message out there for somebody. So yeah, New York has a big signal and all that, but there's so many ways now to get messages across that I think that everybody's almost going to be on an equal playing field pretty soon.
And when you look at an equal playing field, who has influenced your career in radio? People that you say, what, I really like he's doing. I'm not going to copy it, but I'm definitely going to take inspiration from it. Who has some of those people been for you?
Well, I mean, I got the bug for radio back in like 1984, and I couldn't even tell you the name of the DJ, but I won a prize on a radio station, and he played the phone call back on the radio, and that blew me away. I was more excited about that than the prize I won. And I can't remember the DJ's name, but that was my first, like, wow, this is cool. The whole theater of the mind, how things really sound bigger than they really are on the radio. And then, if you want me to drop names, one of the first guys to give me an internship, his name is MJ Kelly. That was his name. I think he goes by the name of Todd Schnitt now. Schnitt. Be careful. I didn't say a bad word. It's Todd Schnitt. And he does a radio show now for WOR at AM 710 here in New York. So at the time, back in the 80s, he was doing a top 40 station. So he was definitely a big influence. When I got to Z100, Elvis Duran was a huge influence. He's now still doing mornings. And he's amazing. Broadway Bill Lee, Scott Shannon, two people I mentioned earlier in the interview. They're also people I used to grow up listening to. But back in the day, I'm showing my age here, we didn't have internet. So I would read magazines about these DJs in New York, and there was a company that would give you a mailing. You could mail them money or a check, and they would send you back a tape of the DJs. So that was how I got my exposure to major market radio stations. I think the company was called California Air Checks, and they were based out of California, and they had people all around the country that would tape radio stations, and then they would source it out, and you could say like for $10 you could get an hour of New York radio on cassette. So that's kind of like how I heard all those people.
And when you look at the landscape now, because we mentioned it a bit before, it's crazy to see how now everything's so accessible. Do you think accessibility is the future of radio in terms of being able to get content online basically whenever you want?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. But at the same time, since everybody can do it, you're kind of like diluting everything. I mean, there's like a lot of choices now. So, you really have to have good content for people to come back. I mean, for example, how many people have a podcast? I mean, a lot of people have podcasts, but only one of them could a guy get Barack Obama? And I don't even know the guy's name, but I even know, that person that had Barack Obama on his podcast.
Mark Maron.
I mean, yeah, of course. I drew a blank. Like, so, I mean, obviously there's millions of podcasts, but one person had enough content that he attracted enough people to, listen to the podcast that he got the damn president on him. So, there's a lot of choices, but you can stand out if you have good content. But, that's a whole other story because there's so many types of content you can do.
Definitely, and we are actually going to go to break in just a second. First, where can people find you on the tweets?
Oh, yeah. Well, social media, it's on Twitter, it's Paul Cubby Bryant, all one word, Paul, Cubby, Bryant, and that's my Instagram as well. And then I'm on Facebook under Paul Cubby Bryant. So as long as you don't put an H in Cubby, it's not Chubby, it's Paul Cubby Bryant. Hit me up, okay?
Definitely. And we'll be right back with more of the Midday Show right after this. Welcome back to the Midday Show with me, Brandon Parnes. I'm here with, I'll say it again, New York radio legend, Cubby is here. And before we got back from the break, we were talking about interviewing. And we mentioned, of course, getting guests in the last segment. But you told me that your kind of interview style, if you could give kind of the listeners an idea of what your interview style is, I'm really interested in, I think the audience would be really interested in how you kind of form a professional radio interview when you're dealing with a big guest or something like that.
Well, every radio interview is different. The thing that we need to keep in mind is in order to keep people listening to an interview, it can't sound too much like a commercial. Now, whenever an artist comes up to the radio station, why are they there? Well, they're there to promote their album. Well, we understand that, but we don't want to make it sound, it can't be just about them trying to sell their new CD or whatever. It's got to be, we got to get to the personal aspects of it. So we try to when we do interviews, we try to, show them right off the bat we're there to support them. But you know what? Don't be upset if we go down the who are you dating, question lane, so it's really, and that varies by artist, Selena Gomez was up recently, and, her manager said, don't bring up anything about Justin Bieber, so sometimes some things are off limits with an interview, but it's really trying to ask questions that people in their car are listening going, I would ask that. So, we try to take care of them because we know they're there for a reason, but we also want to have fun questions.
Exactly. And how much, when you're in the morning, you have that mic in front of your face, how important is making sure you have the listener in mind? How important is that to you as a DJ?
Oh, man. I mean, every time we turn the microphone on, you think to yourself, I think a couple of things when I turn the microphone on. The first thing I think of is every 5 minutes, every 5 minutes that goes by, there's somebody new tuning in. So you can't say your name enough because there's always a new audience out there. That's the one thing that I always keep in mind when I open the mic. And I also know that we only have a few seconds to grab them. We live in a very, very easy, to reach button pushing world where you can change the station in 4 seconds. So you have to make sure that when that mic comes on that you are grabbing them in right away because people will not give you long before they move on. And the world we live in, we need to keep them listening. It's all about the amount of time they listen.
And what would you say for people who, like me, who are just starting out in radio or starting out any career in maybe broadcasting or entertainment, what would be your one piece of advice for them to remember?
Just, persistence. If you're working to climb that ladder and you want to, get your foot in the door or go to a bigger market, don't give up. If you have one setback, because there were many times, before I made it on the radio, I was, I was getting coffee for a DJ, you know, and even though I loved doing it, as my foot in the door, it was going on so long, I didn't know if I'd ever move up. So, and it finally happened. So, it really comes down to persistence, polishing your craft.
Definitely. And right now we're going to move to a segment. Basically, it's me firing off as many questions as I can, particularly tailored to the best of my ability for you. We call it the Fun Down. And we're going to start right now. Your favorite interview that you've gotten to do?
I'll say NSYNC, just because I know you're a big NSYNC fan back in the day.
Yeah, that. And I know you recently interviewed Backstreet Boys, I think about 2 years ago, would you say?
Yeah, it seems like the Backstreet Boys are up at the radio station every few years. They won't go away, which is a good thing. But
It's a wonderful thing, in my opinion.
Well, hey, look, that was your early exposure into music, that boy band period, and everyone has their genre of music when they were growing up that really brings back memories. So that was yours, and actually mine too. But I think the most recent interview that I really enjoyed was actually kind of a wild card here. Do you ever watch the TV show Impractical Jokers?
Oh yeah, I love that show. It's a wonderful show.
Yeah, we had Joe Gatto up, man. He's a trip. He's a really, really funny guy. And we had the Wayans brothers up recently, and they're often funny. And Katy Perry was up recently, and she is like a sweetheart. She just is a really, really good person. I'm a big fan of hers.
What would you say is the best thing about morning radio specifically?
The amount of people that you can reach. It's the biggest day part of a radio station, and even though it's tough getting up early in the morning, once you're up and you're doing your thing, it's the best time because you realize that you're there to start people's day, and the fact that you can be a part of it really is kind of an honor.
And what would you say is the most important thing about when you, like, say, go to do a remote? What's the most important thing that DJs or anybody in radio has to remember when you're, like, out there, you're with the crowd, you're meeting people, you're talking to people? What's the most important thing to remember?
Never let your ego get in the way. I mean, do your best to shake every hand, kiss every baby, take as many selfies as you can, because it's the audience right there that really, at the end of the day, is keeping you on the air. All you need to do is be rude to one person, and in your mind, it's just one person. But to that one person, they'll never forget it, because I've met many people that they're having a bad day, and they may be very cool people, but I've only met the person one time, and they were mad. And if they were mean or whatever, you always remember that. So it's the cliche saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So always keep that in mind.
What was your proudest on-air moment?
Proudest on-air moment? It's got to be turning on the microphone for the first time at Z100 in New York. I never forget how nervous I was. At the time, I'd already been in radio almost 10 years, but it was like I saw the Empire State Building, and here I am getting ready to talk. I don't think I'll ever forget that moment. And my index finger shaking on the microphone button right before I turned it on. It was like, oh my God, is this actually happening? So to say I made it on the air in New York was probably the proudest moment.
And you spoke a bit how nervous you were. What has been the on-air moment that you just felt most comfortable? You felt the most comfortable?
Right now I feel like I've been doing mornings now 9 years, and I don't know. I'm very critical of myself. I'm always like beating myself up and thinking, oh, that could be better, But after 9 years of doing mornings, I feel like the last 2 or 3 years I've been really, really comfortable. I still get butterflies though. I'm not gonna lie to you. Not like when I first opened the mic in New York, but to me, when those butterflies go away, or the excitement in your stomach goes away before you go on the radio, that's when you have to hang up the headphones if those go away. Because the fact that I still feel that way sometimes means that I still love what I'm doing, pretty much.
Now, this question I'm going to end on is a little deep, but say a scenario, you decide to retire, you're nearing the end of your final broadcast. What do you think those last words on the air would be?
I would probably say I'd probably say 5 dirty words in a row, because then they couldn't do anything about it, because I'm retiring. What are they going to do? Fine me? What are they going to do? Fire me? I'll just say a bunch of dirty words. No, I don't know. Hopefully I still have a few years to think of that.
Of course.
It would definitely be thank you, because without the people that without the people that we don't see, only talking to, without them, I wouldn't be around as long as I would have.
And I want to say thank you so much to Cubby for being here. Of course, you said you can follow him on Twitter at Paul Cubby Bryant, all one word. And that's the same as your Instagram and the same as your Facebook?
Yeah, pretty much. It's just, over the years I've turned into just Cubby on the radio. I've just shortened it, but I still keep all 3 names that I had at one time, Paul Cubby Bryant. So, hit me up. And Brandon, again, I can't thank you enough, man, for letting me be a part of your Midday Show. And I don't know, you sound like you know what you're doing. I have a funny feeling I may be working for you one day.
Well, that's very, very kind of you. Thank you so much once again, and we will see you next time with more fun interviews, more fun music, and more fun entertainment and culture talk here on the Midday Show on ECAB Radio. Stay tuned for Carson Daily. We'll see you next time.